achieved.
So obviously UFC 217 is a major event. It's at Madison Square Gardens. It features the return of George St Pierre, kind of a super fight against Michael Bisping. We've got 3 title fights in total, a couple other big high-profile fights. But what I'd like to see the UFC do is try and create a structured layout of events. Let's go with 3 over a calendar year. Let's say one in, you know, what? January, February, March, April time, one in August, and then one in December. And these are bigger events. Fighters get paid more. We put 3 or 4 title fights on each one of those. A couple of number 1 contender bouts, a lot of high-profile bouts at bigger venues. And basically, we pump those up above everything else and kind of make them significant. We're watching the World Series right now with Houston and the LA Dodgers, and it's fantastic. And it's a big card. Everybody looks forward to it this time of year. Same with the Stanley Cup Finals, the NBA Championship, the Super Bowl. Everybody looks forward to these big events. And the UFC it's cyclical. It's constant. It just keeps going and going and going. I like to see them try and differentiate some of their cards and show these are the big shows. These are the shows that fighters want to be on. In the months leading up to the events, you have fights where fighters get an opportunity to fight and compete, and if they win a bout, then they get a chance to go and compete on this upcoming super card. And it just becomes a higher profile, bigger gala for the promotion. Almost like WWE where they have SummerSlam and WrestleMania. That'd be kind of cool, something like that. I'd like to see them try and continue to raise the profile of some of their cards and really push the fans to get involved, push the fighters to get involved and want to be part of them. Additionally, I talked about last show, I was hoping to report back to my second endeavor out to a BJJ Jiu-Jitsu class. It didn't happen. I had a couple things come up. Sick kids make it very difficult to go and do that. I'm hoping to go tomorrow. I'm still determining if it's something for me. I enjoy the concept of it. I really enjoy watching tape and watching technique, and I've gone to a couple of practices, enjoy watching that. I am thoroughly impressed with the individuals who have put in the time and have gone as far as they've gone and continue to go out and train and practice. I'm very impressed with those people. Some of the people I now know, which is very, very cool. And we'll have to see. I like it, but we'll have to see if it's for me going forward. And I'd like to become more regular, but again, time will tell. Finally, before we get into the actual meat and potatoes of the show, my last card, I had to record my last episode at work. I'm a school teacher. A lot of people think this is my job that I do here. It's not. Just a hobby. But I'm a school teacher in real life. And I went to work and needed to record my show on my break, so I took my microphone with me, and I found an empty classroom, closed the door, and one of my colleagues heard I had a live mic and thought it would be funny to come and interrupt when I'm recording the podcast. So I'll let you listen to the clip. There's a little vulgarity in there. He caught me off guard when he did it, but I think it's kind of funny. Fighter, he's aiming for a title opportunity. Hopefully that doesn't. You're a fucking loser. You're a fucking loser. And on that note, welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson. And on this episode of the show, we are breaking down the upcoming UFC 217 event, which will take place in New York City, New York, at Madison Square Gardens, the famous arena, on November 4th, featuring not 1, not 2, but 3 incredible title fights. The return of George St Pierre, Michael Bisping putting his title on the line. It's going to be fantastic. That's the middleweight title. I'll be giving you my 5 main card predictions on this episode of the show. All of my preliminary picks will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. The bet packs will be there as well. I'm coming off a show I didn't do bad. I didn't do as good as I was hoping to do. There were a couple fights that were a little shocking upsets. They played out in manners I just didn't forecast. And hey, that's what we do. We live and we learn. We're going to hopefully put a better run together here to finish the show. I'm still driving to try and get to 300 victories for the year. I've got 299 is my record. I'm hoping to hit 300. I think I have to average. It's going to be tough. There's 9 shows left. I need to average somewhere around the 8 wins per show mark to have any shot at hitting 300 wins. So if I go perfect in this card, that'd be pretty fantastic. On that note, let's get to my first main card prediction. We open at the main card in the UFC's middleweight division as former welterweight champion Johnny Big Rig Hendricks, 18 wins, 7 losses, no draws, takes on the undefeated Brazilian Paulo Borrachinha. Hendricks comes into this matchup with a 1-1 record at middleweight. He had a victory over Hector Lombard, which had things looking good, but then things kind of fell apart for him. He missed weight at 185 pounds, coming in at 188 pounds, and suffered a TKO loss to Tim Boetsch in the second round. He is now 1-4 in his last 5 fights and 3-6 overall over his last 9. That's certainly not a good stretch. That dates back to his run as the middleweight champ or the welterweight champion. For Borrachinha, he's fought twice in the UFC. He's won both bouts. He's coming off his first fight to go beyond the opening round, finishing his opponent in the second round. And this is certainly a step up in competition, taking on a former UFC champion. Now, as mentioned, Hendricks is certainly a small, undersized middleweight, but he has weight issues. That's certainly something he can't, obviously he's not able to deal with, so he's having to fight above his, in a weight class that's more suited for his, or less suited for his frame. For Borrachinha, he is 4 inches taller than Johnny. He'll have a 3-inch reach advantage, and he's the younger man by 8 years. Now, looking at the big Brazilian first, he has 9 of his 10 wins have come by knockout to go along with 1 submission. As I said, all but 1 have ended in the first round. 4 of those victories coming inside the first 90 seconds. Now, Paulo has excellent power in his hands, very good power. He moves very well, throws a solid 1-2, and he'll dig to the body very effectively. He mixes in a long spearing left jab, which will follow with a hard right hand. And his accuracy for a guy who throws with as much power as he does, his accuracy is pretty solid. I really like the way he cuts off the cage. He closes in. He'll target the body against Oluwale Bamboze in his last fight. He was blasting him to the body once he finally opened up with brutal hooks. He mixed in a couple of knees and really took away his gas tank. He's got an exceptionally hard kicking game. He'll mix in some hard body kicks and head kicks as well. And again, I like the way he maintains pressure. He keeps his opponents back to the cage, limits their space, and is not afraid to let his hands go once he closes in. But in his last fight, for a guy who's known for finishing in the opening round, he showed exceptional patience, holding off, waiting for his opponent to make a mistake. He still cut off the cage. He conserved his energy. Bamboze gassed out and eventually made a mistake in the second round, where it wound up on his back, and Borrachinha unloaded with some vicious ground and pound. He is just brutal once he gets top position. He unloads on guys, and it is over. And that was, awesome to see him do that. He will forego defense for offense, and he tends to throw his strikes a little bit low. He throws them from a lower angle, which can open up his chin for counter strikes if his opponent's able to time him properly. On his takedown defense, he showed good balance. He was able to spring back up, but Bamboze was able to take him down a couple of times, and that is certainly worth noting in a fight like this. Now, Johnny Hendricks openly stated he feels much better at 185 pounds. He's not miserable. He's in a position where he feels rejuvenated in the gym when he's training, but he misses weight in his last fight. I believe there was an excuse or a reason for missing weight, but either way, we'll have to see how he comes in here. What Johnny Hendricks best does, he throws a lot of half-power strikes, looking to, pepper away at his opponent before unloading with that big left hand and trying to catch them. When he fought Hector Lombard in his middleweight debut, he didn't really rock him, but he just kept popping away with good shots. He actually hasn't picked up a knockout victory. I think it was UFC 154 against Martin Canton was the last time he actually knocked out an opponent. And we're yet to see how that power holds up against bigger men, because he didn't really hit Boach with a lot that would hurt him. He didn't hit Lumber with a lot that would hurt him. He just, against Boach, it was just his activity, against Lumber, it was his activity that got him the victory. I like the way he throws a nice inside leg kick. He'll throw a stepping knee as well. If he can clinch up his opponent, he'll land some knees there. But again, it's the whole thing is he's fighting bigger, taller men. How does that hold up? Those techniques hold up. Against Lombard, again, his volume was his key to success. He kept chipping away and landing strikes and doing it just enough to get the nod with the judges. Unfortunately, against Tim Boach, he struggled to get into punching range against a longer fighter, and that prevented him from getting that volume attack going. Boach used a lot of kicks to keep him out of range. Again, he had that reach advantage, and eventually we saw Johnny Hendricks rock with a right head kick and fold up under pressure when Boach started landing strikes and was eventually finished. There were minimal wrestling exchanges in that fight. We have seen Johnny show he can land a lot of takedowns in a fight and win a fight as a result. That does put some pressure on his cardio. Again, we haven't seen how that plays out at middleweight. I'm wondering if we'll see that here. He could use his wrestling to try and take Borrachinha down as much as possible, gas him out, and drag him into those deep waters and really test his cardio. But again, he has issues with distance, closing that gap and getting in range to wrestle. He has to find a way to get in there, and Paulo Borrachinha is not a guy you want to mess with taking damage. I think the power and aggression of Borrachinha is going to be the big issue here. I think Johnny Hendricks is going to struggle to find his timing, struggle to find his range, not let his hands go, and my prediction is Paulo Borrachinha to defeat Johnny Hendricks by TKO. Fight number 2 in the main card takes place in the UFC's welterweight division and will feature a bout between the former two-time title challenger, the number 2 ranked Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, 13-1-1, taking on former Strikeforce title challenger, the 4th ranked Jorge Gamebred Masvidal. Masvidal currently carrying a record of 32 wins, 12 losses, and no draws. Now, the winner of this fight is probably sitting behind Robbie Lawler, the winner of the Robbie Lawler RDA matchup, for a shot at the welterweight title. But Tyrone Woodley has recently come out and said, I'm fighting the winner of Bisping, George St. Pierre next. So again, it's all convoluted. It kind of is discouraging, I would think, for these fighters who win big fights, think they've got a shot at the title, and no, wait, the champion is picking who they're fighting next. Either way, the winner of this fight is in a better spot than they were the day before. At the same time, Steve Wonderboy Thompson needs a big win here to regain some momentum. I would think they're not going to throw him. He'll have to pick up maybe at least 1, if not 2 more wins before they would even consider putting him back in there with the champion, as long as it is Tyrone Woodley, because the fights there were a little bit atrocious. Now we have the post-title fight letdown scenario for Wonderboy. He is coming off a draw and a loss against Tyrone Woodley, both fights he could have won. Both were very close, not overly good fights. Have to be a little bit discouraging for Wonderboy Thompson. 2 opportunities to win the title, unsuccessful in both, and now having to rebuild. For Masvidal, he lost a contentious split decision to Damian Maia, who we just saw get thrashed by Colby Covington. Maia got a title shot, though, on the strength of the Masvidal victory. And for Masvidal, he is still working for his opportunity to get there. He is still hungry. He's still looking for that chance to get in position to fight for the championship. Now looking first at Thompson, we're well aware of what he's capable of. He comes from that karate background, uses that karate stance, switches stances constantly, holds his hands very low, but he's exceptionally quick to leap in. He's very hard to time. He manages distance exceptionally well, and he fights much longer than you'd expect him to, even though he's a very long guy. I love the way he throws from a variety of angles, and overall, his variety of offense gives opponents fits because they don't know what is coming next. He throws a number of different kicking techniques, throws back power kicks, he throws front leg kicks, he mixes in those spinning attacks. You know, it's just, and one thing too, when he gets his opponent cornered in the cage, look for him run low with some massive kicks because they have nowhere to move back or to the side to really absorb the damage, and it really can be a damaging attack when he's able to let go with those kicking techniques when you've got nowhere to move. His boxing, he throws a lot of single strikes. He'll move away once he throws them. He throws a nice straight left and a quick jab as well. His right hand, though, has some pop. It dropped both Patrick Cote and Robert Whittaker when he was fighting those guys. His long-range weapons, they keep opponents on the outside. His movement even makes it even harder for his opponent to close in. And once you do try and close in, those counter strikes are right there to make you pay for it. When you look at Rory McDonald, who's a very diversified, very capable fighter, he was simply unable to figure out a way to get on the inside with consistency and lost the fight as a result. Even Tyron Woodley, despite the fact that Woodley went 1-0-1 against him, he seemed very hesitant for the majority of the fight. He had his big moments, and that's how he won those matchups or avoided losing them at least. But again, if he doesn't have those knockdowns, those top position times, he's probably not winning those fights. He probably doesn't have his title belt at this point in time. Additionally, he's exceptionally strong. You know, we saw Johnny Hendricks get right deep on his hips and not land a takedown. Thompson, 81% takedown defense. Rory 0-for-2. Woodley did go 2-for-3. And the thing with Woodley, though, he's a big, strong man as well. When he got on top of Thompson, it was basically the round was over. And Wonderboy found himself in some serious trouble with the ground and pound. That has to raise some eyebrows, especially with Masvidal, who's a pretty good wrestler in his own right. Now, Masvidal's another one of these guys. Stopped cutting. Went back up to 170 after fighting a long time at 155 pounds. He seems to have replenished himself. He's not drained. He's not concerned with gassing out. He can fight more to his potential. 13 wins by knockout, 2-2 in fights ended by submission, 20-9 on the scorecards. But he is 1-4 in his last 5 fights to go the distance, and he has suffered not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 split decision losses in that time span. He has issues with close fights. Again, he needs to do a better job of distancing himself from his opponent when they do go to the scorecards. Now, he is a boxer by trade. He's got some power in his hands, as the numbers suggest. And he's a very strong offensive and defensive wrestling game. He's a very good grappler overall. I would think his offensive wrestling will play a key role in this fight, not so much his defensive. He throws a good left jab. He can move backwards as well. He throws a nice counter left hook with some short punches. He tends to be a bit of a pocket puncher. He'll work to the body very effectively, but that means he's going to have to find a way to get in through the strikes of Thompson and of Wonderboy and land those short-range strikes. He throws a nice jumping knee. He'll throw some body and low kicks. He mixes his offense up fairly well, and again, he moves away under pressure nicely. I like that. He does a good job of seeing strikes coming, anticipating, and again, sidestepping them. When he fought Jake Ellenberg, he did a lot of his damage against Ellenberger along the cage. Close in, let his hands go there. Seemed much more aggressive. Again, close in and throw and not hold back. Again, against Thompson, he has to find a way to get on the inside, get through his distance weapons, land those strikes and not get countered. Masvidal can be hurt. He has been hurt in previous bouts. He tends to recover, but still it can cost him a decision. You know, Masvidal could use his wrestling here to get on top, score some points, tire Thompson out, make him work hard, take him out of his comfort zone. Again, Thompson's coming off a tough title fight loss, which is a concern. He underperformed. Masvidal, I said, is still hungry. I think that's going to play a big role here. Masvidal is going to get on the inside. He's going to clinch and wrestle with Thompson. He's going to work his boxing. He's going to land the better strikes overall. He'll avoid the counters as he comes in. I think he's going to do some damage along that cage. He's going to box that kickboxer. Fight at punching range, not at kicking range. Masvidal's a very crafty fighter. I think Stephen Thompson's going to have a bit of a letdown, as I've previously mentioned, coming off his last fight. And my prediction is Jorge Masvidal to defeat Stephen Wonderboy Thompson by decision. And now we get into our 3-pack of title fights. The first taking place in the women's strawweight division is the champion Joanna Jedrzejczyk, also known as Joanna champion, undefeated at 14-0, taking on the 4th-ranked fighter in the division, Thug Rose Namajunas, currently holding a record of 7 wins and 3 losses. Now, for Joanna champion, She is looking for her 6th title defense, which will tie Ronda Rousey for most title defenses as a female or a women's champion. For Namajunas, she's coming off a submission win over the karate hottie Michal Waterson. Stole a lot of Waterson's momentum to get this opportunity. She's only one fight removed from losing a fight to Karolina Kowalkiewicz, who was recently defeated by Claudia Gadelha and lost her shot at the title against Joanna as well. This is the second UFC title fight opportunity for Rose, so her back is against the wall here, certainly needing a big performance. In her first, it was the finals of The Ultimate Fighter, where she was submitted by Carla Esparza back in 2014. She's still exceptionally young and probably will get another shot if she comes up short here. But again, it's back against the wall for Thug. Physically, Joanna 1 inch taller, they have the same reach. Rose, the challenger, is the younger girl by 5 years. Now looking at the champion first, she's incredibly confident, almost Ronda Rousey-like confidence, but it's very different. The reason she has that confidence, she has been dominating opponents over prolonged periods of time, over prolonged fights. I'm talking beating them up and blasting them with onslaughts over 5 rounds, over 3 rounds. It's just been brutal. She's been taking fighters out, where Ronda was winning fights with quick finishes and really not taking any damage in the process, and submitting them in relatively quick fashion, or in a couple occasions knocking them out. And I had people saying, well, what if she has to go further? What if she runs into somebody who can hit her? With Joanna Champion, we've seen her fight top-level grapplers. We've seen her fight other very good strikers, and she's beat them pillar to post without question. I'm not saying she can't lose, and she won't lose this fight. But what I'm saying is I think she's in a much better place than Ronda Rousey was when she was at her height as the women's bantamweight champion. Now, the common perception in this fight is that Rose wants to fight on the mat, and Joanna wants to keep it striking. I think that's a pretty safe bet, even though definitely Rose is capable of competing on the feet, and Joanna's gone on record as saying she would love to take Rose down and submit her. That's certainly something she's capable of doing and wouldn't mind doing. Looking at the challenger first, she's a dynamic striker, multifaceted attacks, improved wrestling. She's improved herself mentally over the time. She's not nearly as wild, and certainly that shows up in her offense. She works a nice body lock takedown when she's looking to get the fight to the ground. She's very strong in the clinch, and she has an exceptionally good back take. When she fought Michal Waterson took her down, went for that head and arm throw, which is just a mistake, but you see it a lot in women's MMA. Rose defended, took her back, and had a lot of success early on. Eventually, after she knocked her down, she scored a submission via rear naked choke, getting her back as well. She's somebody you don't want in that position at any point in a fight, unless there's only a couple seconds left in the round. Rose does a good job once she gets on the mat, landing ground and pound. She throws some very good elbows, and she really busted up Michal from top position. Look for Rose to rely heavily on the clinch to neutralize her opponent's offense, and I like the way if her opponent is coming forward, she'll clinch up with them, shut it down, and then she'll eventually separate and reset and then attack with her own offense. She throws a nice left jab, straight right combination. She'll work a left hook in as well. She throws a nice step in right hand, and she will slide back and throw some counter strikes as well. Lots of kicking techniques, leg and body kicks. She'll throw some switch kicks, and she landed that big right high kick on Waterson to put her down prior to scoring the submission. She moves very well, good footwork. Her head movement's solid. She's working some feints as well to keep her opponents guessing. And, when she fought Karolina Kowalkiewicz, the fight I mentioned previously that she lost, she was doing very well from the outside and winning the early exchanges, but she took some damage in the clinch. She had some knees landed to the body, and it slowed her down, and it kind of took her breath away, and she lost that fight as a result. And one of the things she has a bit of a reputation, at least that's the way I perceive it as, she's a bit of a front runner. If she's dominating and beating her opponent up and in good position, she looks fantastic. But if she's in a very tough fight and maybe even a little bit step behind, she fades. And that's what happened against Kowalkiewicz after she got off to a good start. She faded in that fight and lost. Carla Esparza did something similar to her, and we'll have to see if that shows up in this matchup. We don't know. Now, for the champion, she's a lethal Muay Thai striker, averaging 6.87 strikes landed per minute, which is ridiculous, compared to 2.43 strikes absorbed per minute. In her last 5 fights, these are her striking totals: 126, 220, 176, 171, and 225. Those are some outrageous numbers. Unreal output. I think her last fight, she has the highest striking differential between strikes landed and strikes absorbed, I believe, in a UFC fight, which is damn impressive. She throws a very good left jab. She works body kicks as well. She'll throw elbow strikes while moving forward. Her high kick and front kick to the face are both there as well. She will target the body, and she's coming off a fight where she landed the most leg kicks in the history of the UFC against Jessica Andrade. She landed 75. That's a fight I got wrong. I thought Andrade would put together a better performance, and she certainly did not. Now, If Joanna can back her opponent up to the cage, she is lethal. She, like, very similar to Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, but even more aggressive. She will unload with a barrage of offense and just get them out of there because they don't know how to deal with it. And she's made her career on beating grapplers. She's beat a number of solid grapplers. And Rose, who's a more diversified fighter, but still that's where her strength lies, that's something she's going to want to do. And she does not want to spend too much time trading with Joanna on the feet. Now, we have seen instances where the champion is vulnerable. Claudia Gadelha dropped her early on, put her on her back, scored a couple of takedowns, and had some success there in that fight early on against Joanna. Eventually rallied in that fight. Valerie Letourneau had some success using the clinch against the champ. Again, Gadelha had some success in the second fight using the clinch as well and putting her on her back. You know, at times we have seen Joanna struggle to get off her back. And eventually she will get back up. And that's the thing. She's very strong. She's very durable. She's very tough. She will rebound. She will come back at you. You know, Jessica Andrade, who's a very strong grappler in her own right, landed 2 of 10 takedowns. Didn't do much on the mat when she was on top. And we've seen the wrestling of Joanna improve since moving to ATT and training in the States. I think it's a big key here. Rose, I think, needs a flash opportunity, a knockdown or a takedown completion to set up her submission game, somewhere she's able to get Joanna's back and make it count. If she can get her back, especially early in that fight, I have no qualms saying Rose is going to win this fight. I just don't think she's going to. I think JJ is just too offensively gifted. She hits too hard. She's too quick. She has too much volume. Rose will eventually falter. She'll see her start to break. And my prediction is Joanna Jedrzejczyk to defeat Rose Namajunas by TKO and retain her women's strawweight title. Moving now to the co-main event of the evening, we have a bantamweight championship fight as the newly crowned champion, Cody No Love Garbrandt, undefeated 11-0, takes on the former champion and number 2 ranked TJ Dillashaw, 15 wins and 3 losses. Now this fight is a grudge match certainly of epic proportion. We never got to see Uriah Faber take on TJ Dillashaw, with, of course, Dillashaw being a former trainer, a member of Team Alpha Male, winning the title, and then eventually leaving with Dwayne Bang Ludwig. We didn't get to see Faber versus Dillashaw, so this is the best thing we're going to get between these two individuals. Lots of emotion. They train together. Obviously, Ultimate Fighter coaches against each other. This is going to be a very interesting matchup. Garbrandt is coming off that win over Dominic Cruz, taking out the longtime champion. Even when Barao and Dillashaw were the champs, everybody said, well, until they beat Dominic Cruz, are they really the champ? Cody Garbrandt beat Dominic Cruz. Very impressive fight. It was a dominant decision victory that raised a lot of eyebrows for the young champion. Now, TJ, of course, had that crazy upset of Renan Barao, beat him again to show it wasn't a fluke, but he lost a very close split decision to Dominic Cruz when he put his title on the line there. He does have back-to-back decision victories over Rafael Assunção and John Lineker, 2 very tough, capable bantamweights. Physically, Garbrandt 2 inches taller, but Dillashaw will have a 2-inch reach advantage, and the champion is the younger man by 5 years. Now, looking at the numbers first, TJ averages 5.38 strikes per minute. That's pretty darn impressive compared to 2.94 strikes absorbed per minute. It's a great ratio for a guy fighting at this high level of caliber of opposition. He landed 109 strikes against Dominic Cruz, which is damn impressive. He had 5 straight 100 strike or better, 100-plus strike performances prior to his last 2 fights where he didn't quite reach those numbers. He throws an excellent lead uppercut. He'll work in a head kicks as well. He does a nice job of really disguising that coming over the shoulder before landing it. His inside and outside low kicks also take away his opponent's base very effectively, and he throws a lot of his offense from the right side. I think that's something he needs to mix up a little bit better, but still, it's working for him. When he fought Rafael Assunção, he had a tendency to move in straight lines when attacking. He was loading up at times on that right hand, and that made him a little bit predictable. Again, it worked. It got him the victory, but it's something for the future that he wants to avoid doing. He does a very good job when he's his best, changing angles, switching stances. He does hold his hands a little bit low. His chin and head tend to be a little bit exposed at times, but he relies on his movement to avoid taking damage. Now, as I said, he has a lot of movement. You know, a lot of people compare to Dominic Cruz when he attacks, and Cody Garbrandt's got some movement as well, maybe not quite as erratic there. But one thing I noticed with TJ, when he decides to engage, he stops and comes straight forward, and he attacks in lines. And he does a good job of slipping out after landing, but still, if you can time him and you figure out where he's coming from, he is coming right at you, and you can counter him. His movement, I don't think, is integrated into his attack as well as a lot of people give him credit for, and I think it's more window dressing than anything before driving forward and looking to unload with offense. Now, on the flip side of things, you know, he is very effective with his wrestling. He hasn't shown us a lot of takedowns in recent action until the John Lineker matchup where he landed his UFC best 5 takedowns. He wanted to avoid standing with him for the most part and take away his biggest weapon, which is an absolute smart way to do things. And we'll have to see if he attempts to use some takedowns against Cody Garbrandt in this matchup. Now, overall, TJ can thrive when he backs his opponents up, but he isn't that unpredictable. He moves forward in straight lines, as I said, and he throws a lot of right hands, and that are some areas of concern in this fight. Now, for Garbrandt, he has 9 wins by knockout. He has very good power, as those numbers indicate. Quick hands. He moves his head off the center line. He throws good combinations, throws a nice left jab, and he can throw some pretty short punches and generate a lot of power without much room to do so. He's got power in both hands. We saw him rock Thomas Almeida first with a left hook and landed a big right for the finish. Against Takei Mizugaki, it was multiple right hands to eventually put him down, landed some nice counter strikes. He's got an excellent counter uppercut with a slip back and unload, and he mixes in his kicks, maybe not as much as I'd like to see, but still it's working for him. At times, and we saw this at times against Cruz as well, he will reach with his strikes. And he can be open down the middle a little bit because he leaves his guard open. But when he's overextending, trying to find his opponent's chin, that is certainly an area that a good counter striker could capitalize on. And TJ Dillashaw is going to look to do that. We have seen Cody buzzed a couple times in fights. His chin is a little bit up. And again, he was chasing Cruz at times, looking to land offense. He had more success when he sat back and let Cruz come to him, and he avoided and landed his own counter strikes. He is willing to stand in the pocket and trade. His hands will drop, as I mentioned, but again, he wants to bait guys in, show them he's got better movement, and then land those better strikes overall. Overall, though, it simply was an impressive performance against Dominick Cruz. Some people knew he was capable of it, but to go out and see him do that, the way he moved in and out, it was damn impressive. I have to wonder if he's a little bit overconfident. All it takes is one strike in this matchup because TJ's got more power than Dom does. All it takes is one strike, and we could see TJ change the complexion of this matchup quite a bit. At the same time, I think TJ's chin is crackable. We saw it against John Dodson a little while back. We've seen him hurt a couple times. Not hurt, but buzzed a couple times in fights. That reliance on his wrestling was very smart against John Lineker, but again, it showed his lack of willingness to stand and trade with a capable striker. I think we're going to see Cody Garbrandt absolutely force him to do that. I think Garbrandt's going to find success backing TJ up when he's attacking. He's going to use a head movement to avoid attacks and fire counters. There should be much more leather exchange in this match than we saw in either one of their fights with Dominick Cruz. And my prediction is Cody Garbrandt to defeat TJ Dillashaw by knockout. We now move to the main event of the evening in a matchup that I certainly never would have predicted that would happen, involving a fighter that I never actually expected to predict again. We are in the UFC's middleweight division as the reigning champion Michael the Count Bisping, 31-7-0, puts his title on the line against the former welterweight champion and one of the greatest fighters of all time, returning to action, George Rush St Pierre, GSP of Canada, 25 wins and 2 losses for the challenger. Now, this is a fight that is incredibly interesting. It's a legacy fight for both men, but it's not the fight people were asking for. We were talking about the George St Pierre, Anderson Silva, when they're at their height of popularity, that fight. Maybe Anderson Silva versus John Jones when they're at their height of popularity. John Jones, Brock Lesnar. This is a fight that certainly is going to go as a big fight between two guys from different divisions who had a lot of success, but it's not one of those matchups we were looking for. Nonetheless, we've got it. Let's enjoy it. Now, first question I have to ask here is, what does GSP do if he wins this fight? Does he defend it against the likes of Robert Whittaker, Luke Rockhold, Chris Weidman, or does he go down to welterweight and say, I'm a 2-division champion, I won the title at middleweight, here, I'm going to go back and win my title back at welterweight, and then, go from there? I don't know. We've heard, of course, as I mentioned earlier, Tyron Woodley saying he's fighting the winner of this matchup. I'll be very curious to see how that takes place, if that takes place. Now, Bisping has said he has probably at least one more fight left in him after this fight. And the curious thing with Bisping is that despite the sharks in the division, your Robert Whittakers, your Yoel Romero's, Luke Rockhold, Chris Weidman, Jacare Souza, he could very well retire having defended his title a couple of times and never faced any of them. Dan takes out Luke Rockhold, very impressive, then defends it against Dan Henderson, defends it against George St Pierre. He could arguably walk away. I would struggle to believe he won't face one of those big names in his next matchup, most likely Robert Whittaker. But we'll have to wait and see. Coming into this matchup, there are an incredible amount of intangibles. Age, the layoff, the size difference, the strength difference. There's a lot of things that are just, I can't predict. It's very difficult. So we're going to talk about them. We'll see. Looking at age first, Bisping's 38, George St Pierre's 36. So they're kind of close in age. But you have to wonder about that cage mileage and damage factor. GSP, over his career, he took some damage closer to the end, but he didn't take nearly as much damage as Michael Bisping has recently. Bisping has been in some absolute wars. He's been knocked out a couple of times. He's been beaten up in fights. He's coming off a fight where he was beaten up and knocked down on several occasions. The mileage on Bisping is significantly greater than it is on George St Pierre, I would say. We also talk about the layoff. Bisping's been much more active. He's fought 8 times since George St Pierre last competed. Bisping has taken a lot of damage again in that time frame. While George St Pierre, he's been out for 4 years, so he's a little bit younger and he's rested. He's been out for 4 years, so there's certainly the possibility of ring rust. But if anybody, like Dominick Cruz talked about him not having ring rust, if anybody's not going to have ring rust or at least come in as prepared as possible, it's George St Pierre. And he talked about getting healthy both physically and mentally in that time frame, and that's certainly something I could see him doing. And using that 4 years as a benefit. It's very difficult to see 4 years away from a fight as a benefit, but for George it could have been. It's also worth noting that when you look at who George has fought, this just gives you kind of understanding of how much time's passed. Only 3 of George's last 12 opponents are still active in the UFC. Carlos Condit probably being the most relevant, having most recently fought for a title. The former champion Johnny Hendricks, who's certainly on his downward trend. And Thiago Alves, who's kind of in that flux where it's just not sure what he's doing at this point in his career. Now, we're also going to talk about size. Bisping is the bigger man. He's only 2 inches taller than George St Pierre, but he's got a bigger frame overall. GSP does have a slight 1-inch reach advantage. And we just saw Chris Weidman take out Kelvin Gastelum, where size was a massive factor. We did see Calvin blast him early and drop him, but eventually Weidman got his size into the fight and took advantage of it. But again, that's Weidman using his wrestling. Is Bisping going to wrestle George St Pierre? Probably not. Now, as far as the size is concerned, George, because he's the smaller man, should have a speed advantage. But he has clearly added some weight and size for a middleweight. And this could slow him down. It could throw off his timing. Again, along with the layoff, that being an issue, we could see the fact he's a little bit bigger than he was last time he fought being, a concern as well as his performance. Now, the strength factor as well. Now, I just watched Chael Sonnen talk, and he said he's fought Michael Bisping, he said twice, and he's trained with George St Pierre on multiple occasions, and he says George St Pierre is a stronger man. That's just the way he sees it. And Chael fights a style that he's going to be in there, and he's going to be testing the strength of both men. So I tend to believe Chael in that situation. Again, Chael's not exactly doesn't have a great track record for spouting the truth, but I'll take his word for this. Does that hold up here? It's hard to say, but if GSP is the stronger man, and he's the faster man, and he's the more rested man, that's a bad combination for Michael Bisping. That's not a good thing. As far as the game plan is concerned, for Bisping, I'd look for him to work behind his jab and use his kicks, especially those switch kick and low kicks, to simply maintain distance. Keep moving on the outside, stick and move, attack, get out of the range, and reset and go again. Wait for his opening to catch GSP with one of his power strikes and put him down. Bisping's got a lot more power than we give him credit for. That's absolutely a fact. But does that opportunity materialize against George St Pierre? We'll have to see. His chin's not perfect. He's been knocked out by Michael Cera. He's been rocked. He's fighting a bigger man. He's never fought at middleweight before. Bisping's certainly going to test it. Now for George, I still expect to see him utilize that jab. That Superman punch will work its way into the fight as well. You're trying to fight at range. But I expect to see him at times close the distance, either shoot for a takedown or look to clinch up with Bisping on the cage. Use that strength, muscle him into the wall, and, take Bisping out of his element, which is striking. Look for change levels if Bisping pushes forward to engage. Try and counter with a takedown. Use his momentum against him and plant him on the mat. Now, overall, GSP offers more variety in his attack because of his wrestling. Bisping can wrestle, but it's not his strength. Let's put it that way. But overall, when you look at it's simply hard to take too much away from what we've seen out of George in his career. Because of all these X factors, you have to wonder how Bisping's going to perform. George is an elite level athlete. He's an elite level athlete coming off a four-year layoff and moving up in a weight class. Those are a bunch of X factors that just are difficult to predict, difficult to break down. If anybody's telling you they know exactly how this fight's going to play out, they're full of shit. Bisping had a rough time against Dan Henderson. He won a contentious decision against Anderson Silva, guys who were at the end of their careers. George might be there as well. Talis Blaydes gave him a run for his money and arguably could have won that decision in that fight. We saw Bisping rely on his cardio and his volume to edge out those matchups to make a difference. Unless George's layoff has been an absolute major problem or the weight he's putting on compromises his cardio, George's cardio should not fail him like the other fighters have done in the past against Bisping. He should be able to match the volume of the count and surpass it because of a lack of a slowdown, because he'll be able to use some wrestling and get some dominant positions, score some top position time. Again, if Bisping can crack GSP, he should be able to stop him. But that's easier said than done. I think George is going to use his speed, his surprising strength, his takedowns, and his clinch work. It might not be the most exciting fight, but George St Pierre is going to mix all of that together with some success on the feet and grind this matchup out over 5 rounds. And my prediction is George St Pierre to defeat Michael the Count Bisping by decision to claim the UFC middleweight championship. So those are my 5 main card predictions for UFC 217. All my preliminary picks, as always, will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. Now, as much as I picked George St Pierre to win the title, he could easily come out and get knocked out in the first round because the fight game is unpredictable. It's brutal. He could get knocked out. Say that's it for me. I was in the cage for all of 2.5 minutes. It just didn't work out. I'm going back in retirement. I had my opportunity. It's not there. Thanks for the memories. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see how it plays out. It's exciting because of all the intangibles. It's exciting to see it's exciting to see George back in as a fan, see him back competing. I'm very much looking forward to it. It's going to be a good night overall. We've got a very good card ahead of us, and still a busy November and December on route. Thank you very much as always for tuning in. Please follow me on Twitter at KO_predictions. You can also follow me on Facebook and YouTube. I'd love to hit 2,000 subscribers on YouTube. I know I've been at it for a while, and that's a pretty low number. But hey, I take what I can get, and I don't complain. Again, thanks very much for tuning in. I appreciate every single one of you. You know who you are. Hi. And talk to you soon, guys.